Why don't we do that for dogs? I don't know. In Sweden they do. In Australia we're just not well enough organised. What we need is to have the data. We need to have the scores on the dogs in order to be able to calculate the EBVs, and that would give us a more accurate tool for selecting dogs. I can select a Holstein dairy bull as the father of my next lot of Holstein calves from anywhere in the world. I can pick up a booklet and I can look up the estimated breeding value of German bulls, American bulls, New Zealand bulls for performance in Australia, and I can choose which one I want. So this is a tremendously powerful tool if you could get something like this in place. We could do it for dogs. There's nothing different about dogs. It's having the data that's the critical thing. However, there are practical difficulties, and some of the questions I think have already alluded to this. We sell them as puppies usually, and they get castrated or spayed by the time they're 6 months of age usually. So do we need to select early? Pauline's already told you the answer to this. We tried testing puppies at young ages and then correlating the test results with how they turned out as adults. Again, this is for fearfulness, but you could mimic these results for other traits. The tests at 6 and 7 weeks were no good at all, hopeless. 8, 10 weeks it was a bit better, 3 months, 4 months, getting better still at 6 months, better still at 12 months. So basically you certainly want to leave it until they're 8 weeks or more, and the later you can leave the decision, the better. So what can you do? Don't fool yourself that you can pick pups when they're 6 weeks old. Delay the decision. If possible, do something like sell the dogs with breeders' rights, and even then keep enough of them entire so that you can have another round of selections at maturity, at least at 12 months of age anyway. Particularly for things like aggression. They're not going to come out so much in a young animal. Genetics of other traits, well, virtually all of them are the same. There's always a genetic component and there's environmental influences as well. There are breed differences. As I've mentioned, they're poorly documented. You won't be surprised to find that Kelpies were more excitable than Labradors. The crossbreds are generally better for what I'll call fitness traits. In other words, things to do with surviving and reproducing, crossbreds usually have an advantage. For example, in our results for hip dysplasia, the Labradors had worse hip dysplasia than the Kelpies, and the crossbreds were as good as the Kelpies. So there's an advantage in crossbreeding. For all of these traits, there's some heritability. So selection's important. And again, for the fitness traits, inbreeding makes things go worse. So inbreeding decreases their resistance to disease, increases the abnormalities, decreases general survival and reproduction traits. So can we put all that together into a design of a breeding program? First of all, choose a suitable breed. Most people choose one they like the look of, but it'd be nice if there was a bit more objective data available on what breeds what the real differences between breeds are. Consider crossbreeding. There are clear advantages there. And it doesn't mean you have to do it, but there's some advantage. I'll just show you some pictures. This is a Kelpie Labrador. This is a German Shepherd boxer. What did I... Oh, sorry, I'm going stupid. That is a boxer Kelpie. That's a boxer German Shepherd. That's a Kelpie Labrador. 100% of this litter became guide dogs, 4 out of 4. That's a German Shepherd Kelpie. Now, none of those are popular today. They don't compare with miniature Labradoodles and things, but still, the crossbreds were quite nice dogs. The first cross, that's when you cross 2 purebreds, is the best and most predictable. If you take the crossbreds and you cross them together, that's okay, but the advantages are not so great, and you get a bigger spread, more variation in that second cross. For example, Poodle Labrador F1s, from my anecdotal experience, don't shed. But if you mate them together, if you have Labradoodles that are later generation crosses by mating crossbreds together, then they're highly variable. Some of them have got coats more like Labradors and some of them have got coats more like poodles. Select the best within the breed as parents. That sounds obvious, but most of the time people do it rather ineffectively. They kid themselves that their dogs are good, often because they only have one bitch, so it's got to be a good one. But if you actually really implement selection, it works. Here's results from Swedish dogs, where in '76 they thought they better do something about hip dysplasia. So this is the percentage of dogs that had hip dysplasia in St Bernards in 1976, and this is in '88 after 12 years of their selection program. And in all of the breeds, the incidence of hip dysplasia went down, but particularly in the Rottweilers. The Rottweiler breed actually took this seriously, and they went from being the 3rd worst breed to the best breed for hip dysplasia because they implemented the selection program properly. This is from Switzerland, German Shepherd dogs. They rank them being Germanic. They do this thoroughly. They have scores for all these traits, and in all of these things, low scores are good. And sure enough, the selection program was working from the 70s through to about 85 or 90, and then it looks like they took their eye off the ball. They thought they were still practicing selection, but they were finding all sorts of excuses why their dogs were good enough and they didn't need to do any more. This is data from guide dogs 30 years ago. The puppies that were donated to them, same breed, Labradors, donated puppies, reared exactly the same as their own dogs, had a 33% success rate. Their own breeding program in those days had a 47% success rate. So just a couple of generations of selection had substantially improved the dogs they were breeding. Now, what do you need to make selection work? You need discipline. You need to really enforce this selection program. And I don't know how to get across to you how hard to do this is. The vast majority of industries, even with livestock, stuff it up. They find reasons why good old James III, the bull we had 20 years ago, is still terrific, and they keep on using him. They find things that they want to select for which are not their main breeding objectives. I would argue success in the show ring comes into that category.